me just to make sure you can hear my voice?
I can hear you.
Oh, great. Excellent. Thank you. Well, it is 9:01. It is Thursday, December 11, and we are here getting started with the Safer Advisory Group meeting number 4, the last one of the year. And we're meeting in person in Salinas, California. And we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. So real quick, just for meeting logistics, we do have language interpretation. We have Gutierrez, who are our Spanish interpreters for today's meeting. For everyone joining via Zoom, please find the interpretation feature with the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. It's going to be very important that every language. If you want to listen in Spanish only, please select mute original audio. Bienvenidos a todos nuevamente. Tenemos interpretación disponible para todos los que nos están acompañando por la plataforma de Zoom. Les pedimos que por favor de interpretación que está abajo de su pantalla lo opriman y para que solamente escuchen la presentación en español, le pedimos que apaguen el audio original y lo van a encontrar como mute original audio. Los intérpretes de hoy son Jazmín Carrasco y Mark Gutiérrez. So, si tienen algún comentario, les pedimos también que lo hagan lentamente para que ellos capturen sus mensajes y sus palabras. Next slide. So just a few ways to participate. This meeting is being webcast publicly in both English and Spanish at video.calipa.ca.gov. This meeting is being recorded in English and Spanish, and it will be posted along with our meeting materials on our website. To provide public comment, we ask folks to please email safer@waterboards.ca.gov. Or if you'd like to provide public comment, we'll wait towards the end of the presentation to also unmute yourself and state your comments verbally. For any language interpretation assistance, please email also the Safer team. And we'll go to the next slide. Also, for folks who are joining via Zoom, you have the option to view the PowerPoint in English or Spanish. So just be sure to look at the top of your screen. There's 2 tabs. You will see English PowerPoint or Spanish PowerPoint, and click on the one that you prefer. And we'll go to the next slide. Real quick Zoom interactions. We had the end of it in chat box. Send a message to our questions. You can read your name and come down. And go to next. All right. Today for this morning portion, the discussion program goals, the core by the Division of Drink Financial Assistance. We will on the Central Coast for folks to know all projects that we want to go towards the. We'll adjourn the meeting on the Central Coast Safe Drink. Quick, ask you to please mute your if you're able to my video. As you need them, we do have a break in the no breaks, please go ahead. Take care of yourself. Again to speak slowly.
Sorry, go back to that. Sorry.
Are able to capture and we also ask you to please. Something that's
Okay,
very
so
Index
1, 2,
cards,
3, 4, can anyone here
a short,
on the
so
computer?
we'll ask you if there's any
You can hear, sounds good.
Okay, perfect, thank
Perfect.
you.
please
All
write
right.
that. And for,
And then if I'm taking with AB.
please write down your questions, we can, and we will keep track of those
Webcast.
questions.
Oh, nice.
We'll be sure to follow up.
This recording.
So it's important that we always ground our meetings, with the water.
Recording for us.
This meeting is guided by the Water Board's mission, and that is to preserve, enhance, and restore the quality of California's water resources and drinking water for the protection
And you said you wanted
and all
Spanish.
beneficial uses, and to ensure proper water resource allocation and efficient use for the benefit of present and future generations. And we'll go to the next slide.
Thank you. I need it. That's what I like.
All right, at this point, I know we have Supervisor Lopez here to give
Recording in progress.
a brief welcome remarks to the County of Monterrey. So Supervisor Lopez, if you can please come forward and share a few words with us.
It's an honor to welcome you all. Place to California, right? The very first. It's not far from here. From the coast, for our English. It's tough in a world that looks like.
Okay.
Are we audio set?
Sorry, I believe we are fully audio set. Interpretation works. And then I just want to test if you can stand on
Yeah,
this
1, 2, 3, no,
direction. Like,
Al doesn't work, Al's following me. Hello, hello,
A little better?
yeah, hello. Hello.
The Monterey County, just about 10 miles.
Yes.
That original California Constitution, English and Spanish, is transformed so many times. It's iterated from grazing land or narrow crop. And who knows where we're going next? We're ripping vineyards out of this valley as we see what this valley can become as it is generations. But as part of that, the most important thing is taking care of the people who make it run. You hear the numbers.
Recording
Size of
stopped.
The ag industry in Monterey. But without the
Recording in progress.
hands that make it possible, it's nothing. We know that. Don't feel seen, often don't feel heard as they raise their challenges. And I want to thank the Water Board for seeing one of those communities this morning. That is a community of San Luis. They've gone, they're later on your agenda, they've gone near drinking. A huge shift. Nitrates were the original kind of trip, and then after that came the challenge of just TDS, manganese, and other constituents that turned that water multiple times.
Oh, okay.
That community for a long time gave up. They stopped government to look for solutions because they didn't feel their voice was being heard. But now we're making progress in partnership with the Water Board and with Cal Water, who stepped into the frame. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about the importance of consolidation. When we look at communities like San Lucas who don't see a path for themselves, the reason we share that is some of the initial numbers. If they had maintained their independent water district, they were looking at bills for somewhere between $250 to $400, depending on the inflation within the project by the time it actually gets completed per month. For a community that right now sees about a 30% default rate on payments, that's $60 a month. So going to that cost, improbable and possible, yes. But working with someone like Cal Water to come in and build us into a larger system, those bills, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but it will range somewhere from 70 to 100, maybe a little over $100.
The sound quality.
That's doable. That protects the small farm working community and keeps them seen and heard and exist. There's no silver bullet for all the problems we have. I alone can think of three major systems within my district that we're constantly trying to bring solutions for. But keeping an open mind, looking for solutions and reaching across the partners to say, is there something here? And I'll share, Cal Water has no reason to say, yeah, we'll take on San Lucas. But it came from the human connection. And the reason I say that was I was standing with an employee of Cal Water at an event in King City, the next town north of San Lucas, having a conversation about the fact that Santa Claus doesn't come to my district 5 years ago. Rather than say, oh, that sucks, bye. He said, let's make him come. Let's find a way. And we did. This will be the 5th year next week that Santa Claus lands via helicopter in King City and brings joy to my family. Where a little girl who told me, did you see him? Did you see him in year 1? And I said, yeah, I saw him once. She said, he doesn't come here, but he's here. He always goes to Salinas, but he doesn't come here. Well, I kind of felt the same way about water. The solutions didn't come. Now they're here. Based on that relationship and bringing Santa, I asked, well, what do you think about bringing water to San Luis? They said, well, we can look at it. We can't promise anything. But I want to thank you for being at this table, because it's those conversations, that willingness to spend your time here today, learning about our challenges, learning about our issues that could lead to that next solution. Your partner at this table, that means a lot to me, because at the end of the day, it's about the people. Thank you for sitting here today, and I do apologize that I can't stay with you. I intended to be with you all day long, but in the time that I signed up for this, I also got appointed to the California Coastal Commission. We're dealing with a little thing called Diablo Power Plant today, so I've got to run. I'm here with that one. But thank you all for your time, and thank you for being here and for the work that you do for me. And I just wish you all a happy holidays.
And when recording, ladies and
Thank you for that welcome.
Mine is recording in yours.
I'd also like to thank advisory member Rami that made this possible, as well as advisory members team with Community Water Center, Brandon Wallinger, for being here and supporting the logistics.
Okay.
Rami, would you like?
Yeah, so good morning, everyone. Everyone to have easily. And also to go see.
One last issue.
We're trying
I
to
have
assist.
not recording before. So
Getting
only
credit here,
one
but
of us
Alma and
recorded.
the team has been.
AV services is like recording separately.
It's just taking putting this together. It's a lot of time and effort, but I think it's well worth it. The smiles on the faces.
But. Señor Silverio, ¿algunas palabras que le gusten?
So which
Ya que está en su casa.
Spanish recorded.
Alma trying.
Also just.
Buenos días. Yo estoy contento. Esta es mi última junta con.
So say if you get AV is doing.
Estoy contento y vinieron aquí a.
Oh, can you give us like a test for hosting us?
Hacerlo mejor. Muchas gracias.
I just want to say good morning and thank you so much for being here. I appreciate getting to know you all, and also the fact that are very important.
Muchas gracias, señor Silverio.
I'll
go ahead and move on. Is on our agenda. We do have here President Sean McGuire, so we can kick off presentations with you. If you want to introduce yourself.
Sure, Sean McGuire, State Water Board, and just really happy to be here today. Good to see you all and love this.
Thank you for joining us today. For folks in the office of you can also just briefly introduce yourself. I'll kick it off. Alma Lopez.
Johannes Reinders.
Adriana. Welcome.
Lacey Carlson. Hi, Amelia.
That's her, the small but mighty team. We'll go. Assistant. Thank you, Jen. And we'll go ahead.
Andrew Alpha. Deputy Director.
Yeah. Brian.
Be your living safer section of the drinking water.
Terrence here.
Senior engineer for. Sharon Miller, I'm the new, water.
I think you're thinking.
This way.
There's no meeting.
And I know we also have Chuck Fisher online, so he'll. Yeah. Shortly. We'll go ahead and also ask our compañeros from the Central Coast Water Board staff to also introduce them.
You're there with the Central Coast Water Board?
And James Bishop, Central Coast Water Board.
Thank you for being here. Darcy, Elkins here?
She's not here yet.
Not yet. Okay. We heard from SWRCB a little bit and also slide and have our advisory members introduce themselves, and you can go ahead and share your name and the community organization. We will go ahead and go towards my. Go this way and look at Stephanie and I. Take it off.
Kristen Dobbin, UC Berkeley, UC
with Central California Environmental Justice Network.
Valley Water Club. Michael Knight.
Incorporate area thermal, small. Good morning.
And Shannon Murphy, I'm a part of the. Southern California, but really representing education and the work that we do with small communities.
Can anyone hear me?
And we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Awesome. So this is where we begin around domestic wells. Advisory group member coming in. Welcome, Eric Arellano. And we'll go ahead and give the mic to Andrew Alpha for this presentation.
Well, welcome and good morning, everyone. Our next discussion, last advisory group meeting where we had a panel on domestic wells. What we're really looking for is for your advice and your feedback on what developing a domestic well strategy. As you all are familiar, we have developed how we can advance safe drinking water for public water systems.
Buenos días,
See, you know, what focus or priorities should the board wells. So that's the purpose of today's conversation. At our lab, a wide range of domestic well programs that are taking place across the city and the variety that exists. And here today,
I would love to get.
what are the main priorities that the board should consider? To our discussion questions, a couple of logistics, and then I'm gonna pass it over to Andrew. The way we're gonna have our discussion in person is our name tags. So if you wanna jump in, just flip your name tag vertical, and then we'll write down your name. So the advisor group members joining virtually, please raise your hand. Andrew?
Yeah, just to add, I mean, I think fund expenditure plan is was adopted in October. The direction around what we sort of high level schools in there for the water course program. So part of that is trying to all the pieces fit together. Yes. So central programs in Central Coast. Later the salts program. And you know, the water board is working on all of how it relates to domestic. How can we maybe bring those together better? And, I think there's a series of questions that we have.
I would assume.
To the next slide. And if we can go to the next. And then one more forward.
Right.
All right. We're actually.
Try talking.
But do you hear any of what
So
we
now
wanna
it's duplicating.
discuss? With existing domestic well programs to avoid
Amanda, can you
duplication
hear
and
us?
maximize sharing or
I can hear
co-funding
you.
models are appropriate.
There's
for
some background
counties,
noise, though.
groundwater
more just to see if I can.
or CV salts management.
Yeah.
zones.
Can you hear
And
me?
again, if you to jump in, go ahead and make your name that the folks online could hear you as well.
Señora Isabel, buenos días.
Hola, buenos días, Alma, ¿cómo estás?
Ay, muy bien, gracias por acompañarnos.
Oh, de nada, un placer. Una preguntita, ¿sí me puedes mandar a mi teléfono el número para conectarme por la tableta? Porque me he conectado por el teléfono.
¿Quiere que le mande el link?
El link, pero mándamelo al número, al celular. Porque, bueno, sí, porque la tableta tengo que, no sé cómo meterle el link que tengo aquí.
Muy bien. Ahorita se lo mando por texto.
Por favor, ¿sale?
Gracias.
Gracias, bye.
And was able to supplement the program with the management zone started. Now we're analyzing for a whole series of chemistries that really are natural occurring, some legacy constructs. So plus lunar based, well permitting based, like nitrogen partially. And I think like those various programs, I think it would be good to around the state, who's on first, kind of thing, using the old metaphor. Where are all these? Who's the lead? Where are the authorities? If there's an authority that as in regional water boards and basic tournament, work your way down into then who's implementing it. I don't know if there's a go-to place. Somebody in a region wants to start a program of where do we even start? Especially when you go to the county level. The counties are living in their world and our county that it's really raw nerve scope. But as the GSAs come into the well mitigation programs, now where are those? Valley water footprint, where is the well mitigation program? What does that do? how is someone able to contact to find out my well went dry? Some people know really well about that, others are just, they have no idea where to even start. Oh, and then, of course, the language barriers are all there. This gentleman here and his organization, Self-Help, does a great job, I would say, in the South. The Northern Valley, not. There's not that many entities out there yet that are addressing domestic well issues. Too, and with their the existing activities they have now. We've noticed that always in our last 5 years, you call them and or have other things that are funded, that are already implemented, that they have to do, they're mandated, now that's another thing that they're taking into their performance. So I don't know. It would be good to know for us and the others that are getting into this world of where do you start? Down, from the organization. Down to the people that want to sign up. And then once you get that set up and how in crazy world we're in, and you go to and one of those stations or your local radio, you can have a million of stuff. Where do you start now? The social media and all of that. So anyway, there's a lot of challenges that the programs that are there. And
Or is it your camera?
And having access to the information, education. There's a million other little things about barriers of getting involved in government programs that we run into head on. I don't know what to do. Get into it. So like challenges that have in trying to correct what seems to be an easy, but also fix, but really is not. That's my perspective.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Perry. So figuring out where to start first, understanding. People, thank you. James?
What Harry said, and then I think has evolved when I first started with the safer program that private wells, water. Okay, and there's been a lot of folks working in that and get to the point where people are kind of thinking of it themselves. There's so many people doing it all themselves. But maybe like the self-help program and I was talking to my member a little bit earlier about how he works with GSAs and one-on-one. These folks that are on the front lines have that understanding of how the sections work. It's better, that message is given out in a consistent and focused manner. And keeping on task and not have that kind of vision creep that kind of tends to go out and get multiple folks doing the same thing. So that's kind of
so doing more cross-pollination.
Yeah, the folks that are working in the field of what others are doing in the field so that they can be, there's something going on in the Central Valley that's similar to what we're trying to do here. Maybe we could implement this. How to improve the content better.
Thank you, Jim. We'll go with Juan and then we'll go with Adam next.
So I'm not sure if this is exactly what you guys are asking for, but on the TA side, I think it'd be great if the state on the safer TA side prioritize domestic well projects. One of the ones that I was having a presentation, last conversation we had here, consolidating the water system, large clusters of domestic wells. And we have a lot of people with nitrate issues and natural capacity issues.
think that'd be great, if we can also tackle those with TA, to extend services out to a broad question of people who are experiencing well condition issues and capacity issues. I think they'll stabilize those systems out there and remove a lot of empty holes in the ground there as well. That's a suggestion I could pass along as well.
And do you mean prioritize funding when doing consolidation projects or just in general domestic well?
Yeah, I mean, it is a consolidation project, I feel like, but prioritize those domestic well consolidation projects. Where we're gonna consolidate several wells into one system.
Thank you, Juan.
Yeah. To me, I'm not an expert on the domestic wells aspect, but there is this patchwork of counties and TSAs and programs that are doing work. I think that offers both an opportunity and several challenges. The first opportunity is if we can invest in really understanding what's being done in a comprehensive way, then maybe we can identify what programs are really doing it well and say, hey, here's the 1, 2, 3 programs that really look like gold standards that we would try to replicate or try to, hold up as models for anyone who's developing this kind of thing. That sort of independent, a bunch of independent projects almost creates this natural experiment. And the challenge then is first about barrier to entry when things are so complicated. So I think there's a role for a central agency to say, we've identified who all these programs are, these are the ones that sort of meet our threshold, and here's where they are. If you come to this one website, it'll show you what's available in your area, really lower the barrier to entry. They did a great job of lowering the barrier to entry with the TA request process. That's going to be as important or more important with individual domestic concerns. And then I think the potential challenge there is that if we do have a bunch of independent groups operating independent programs, there's almost certainly some disparities in how well those perform, what's available to different people. So I think there's an equity concern if we can create a standard for what a minimum program that gets involved folks that maybe when we put up for.
I think I agree with folks have said already. I think there's a lot of resources and efforts dedicated.
Señora Isabel, buenos días. ¿Me puede escuchar?
The state water board has done a pretty good job at standing up.
Buenos
when
días,
others are
sí,
not
Alma.
stepping up to the plate.
Ay,
Nada más.
perfecto.
No me puedo conectar por la tableta. No sé qué está pasando.
Le mandé por teléfono el enlace de Zoom. Si lo puede usar con la tableta, ¿es posible que funcione?
Nada más me llega el número de el ID. Hay un número que entra y luego se mete el ID. ¿No son dos números?
Ah, sí. Ese también se lo acabo de mandar a su celular.
A ver.
Le puse Webinar ID.
Ajá, pero entonces, ¿cuál otro? Porque yo recuerdo que le pongo dos números y luego la clave. Son los mismos que están en el webario.
Good morning.
Communities that are and millions of dollars have been spent.
Can you guys hear me?
Impacts that the state of California has not caused.
Yes.
And I think
Yes, I can hear you.
board is doing a better job at aligning
Good morning,
resources
Don.
and ensuring that.
Good morning.
But that comes out.
Thank you for joining.
And a lot of doing a lot of the same things. I think just
If you need anything, I can be
lessons are
around.
learned that communities are not having to only depend on the state, but also depend on groundwater stability agencies.
I want to see if maybe señora Isabel se puede integrar al canal español
And along those same
and
lines,
see how we would do it.
right now, a lot of mitigation.
Because she'll be in the
programs are being
Spanish channel.
established by
Mhm.
Groundwater stability agencies.
And a lot of those have different requirements to participate in the programs. It could be within the same county, there could be different requirements for the same, for different GSAs. I think that provides a lot of clarity. And this does not communicate to community members like what the standard is. And I think the State Water Board could develop what navigation programs should look like across the board. What are the basic requirements to qualify? What instances of guidance? And we just make a big impact, leveling the playing field for everyone. I would say that's a big need. And then having a list of resources that are available. I think the board kind of already does this. Just sharing that. The resources that are available. Then I would also agree with Representative from South Bend sharing the accelerating basketball projects. Critically important.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. We're gonna go with Angela and then Jim.
Thanks. I'm just trying to connect the pieces between what Adam and Eric shared because it really is critical to have state water board guidance around domestic well mitigation and around performance and even what's appropriate criteria. GSA or management zone to be able to take on any type of impact that's seen in the area with domestic wells. And the example that I have that I recently was providing at least the best support I could was during the month of September. There was a domestic well owner that was only 2 miles outside of the city of Clovis that their well went dry. They went through self-help services to apply for hauled water, bottled water. They met the criteria, they went through the well assessment, but then they were denied their application because there was already an existing well mitigation program in the area, which in this case was kind of within the sub-basin, that it was directed to reapply so that they were able to receive the services. And the applications are different. So self-help was very one-page, formal, yet this sub-basin well mitigation application was almost, I wanna say, like 5 or 6 pages, almost like 5 pages each. It was very detailed. It was trying to ask for a lot of like well specs. It was trying to ask for ownership of the property. Which, you know, this was different because this well owner had everything. Her family, father deceased, she took over pretty much the entire property. Managed to get all the well permitting, all of the well.
So you have the meeting, like you have the agenda,
3 hours.
PowerPoint.
So if we compare that to someone who was Spanish speaking, who maybe, you know, may not have this type of information accessible, it probably would have took like over a week or 2 to get this done. Because they have to go through the county to get all this information to submit it to the sub-basin's mitigation program. And so unfortunately,
I can always call you and follow up with you
got denied
to fill
3
out
days
the other
later
portions of the form.
because they were
But that'll be the
told
most
it was a
important part.
well
There's also an
pacing
envelope
issue. And then that bounced back to self-help overall
any
taking
receipts that you
over.
may have.
And then providing hauled water services plus bottled water, which took a whole month
And
to try to
water,
get this household connected. And so I think
Tacos, bread,
for
thank
me,
you.
that
Advisory
really
member Rami Kailan
demonstrates
for
a lot of the
the
differences of
support
different
with the
approaches to
logistics,
what the
for keeping my
criteria
abilities
would
happy.
entail to
And
allow
getting all
a
these
domestic
logistics
well owner
ready.
to fully
So
qualify.
please just help
So I don't
yourself.
think it's even a
And we're gonna
funding
get started
issue,
in just a minute.
even though there was a bit of some kind of like observation that it may have been a funding issue at the sub-basin level that they couldn't like. But I still feel like performance rates. Obviously, 2 different approaches. You know, they didn't qualify. I wanted to give an example how critical.
Thank you so much for these 2 programs. for in their application. People. So thank you for sharing.
And just in your scope, just a thought, right? It's a stress that, domestic wells are not regulated. And so you have a whole different type of clientele statewide that, they aren't under any obligation to do anything other than, get the drains, have their water. So it's that conundrum of how do you reach these folks to, kind of, not have the fear of, they're gonna take the water away or something like that. I think there's definitely that type of feeling out there with folks that have good water. They're just gonna take my property, drink as well. So I think we should remember that there should be some kind of focus that kind of addresses that stigma. Oh, right. That, we're not, the state's not gonna take your project, but they want you to work with you, something to bring it more into a way that they can understand that, what it means to get your water tested, what the consequences are, bringing contaminated water, not to scare them, just reach, target the audience. And I think that would go a long way in promoting folks, forward to the water tested rather than, I don't want them to test my water. So I think that's a problem. Well,
Thank you, Jim. So some more education and reaching.
yeah, reaching the audience, targeted the audience. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We'll go with Stephanie, Kristen, and then Michael.
Thank you. So one thing we are doing in Madera County is building a website where you can type in your address or APN and see what programs there are for wells, both wells that have gone dry and water quality issues. We're trying to tackle that. Most of the county itself is in the foothills and mountains, and so doesn't have coverage with GSAs. They would need to use self-help services. And then I just, as a county representative, want to make a couple county-ish comments. As a hobby, sometimes I Google country western songs and the word county. And I find that there is a lot of county blaming just in the popular culture. Counties are often your agency of last resort, where no one else wants to do something, we step in. And in the case of our GSA, while we're the largest GSA, we're also the land that other people didn't want to represent because it's 100% groundwater dependent. So counties typically do not have the resources to do anything more than they're doing. Many people have several jobs within the county, paid for one, but taking on many roles that typically don't happen outside of counties. So just be cautious on the counties, because that really is part of our culture for people working within counties. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to about equity. When I see this question, like how can programs, to me, that's maybe the to create some sort of equity between. I mean, maybe the board has a role. Ideally, there's some minimum standards that are really not meeting needs locally. That we know that many of these programs are being done through different programs that have. So there won't be, I think inherently going to be kind of equity in terms of services available across. That is where SAFER should. Those gaps and the question of people who are outside of kind of the valley management zones or GSAs. So I would love to be on the existing programs to make sure that there aren't domestic wells that are receiving any type of services. Sharing and co-funding models. I think some people are coming up with ideas, and I think this and lift them up, because I don't think there's any. We can't pool money and kind of administer these resources. Counties, some counties have the capacity, might want to run there to run a domestic well program, but in other places, maybe it's Valley Water. But if we have pool the funding from various entities there so that they can administer, owners have kind of a singular point of contact. Madera County's tool so that everyone can type in their app. And then on the back end, figure out who pays for that. I think that the bigger issue in my mind is the coordination.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kristen. Both are addressing our third bullet point. If we want to click on if we want to click on the next, you all are interested in also responding to the counties and building capacity to manage domestic well issues. For you all to consider.
The discussion going longer, but we kind of all over the years being involved with a number, heavily involved with the Tule sub-basin, and you know that the same thing continues. We have no short find solutions to those issues. I think you have to complement the efforts currently by the state water center, self-help, working find the problems, and collectively you have every. I agree that the county does get a lot of blame. I think the only thing you could ask for, and it's obvious, organized communication. I think putting this group together is perspective and the efforts that have culminated into try to coming up with a will of expectations and organizing more the state water board, the GSAs, and like in our case, the county issued well permits. Says where we're doing the same thing over. Well, and then you have another issue where the well goes bad or water quality becomes the issue for. So, I mean, those coordinations, I think, are key. I wouldn't be here if I had answers, I'm trying. We all have these problems, we're all trying to figure it out, but the communication that we've had in the past has provided problems that occurred in the communities and consolidations. Collectively defining, are we going to continue issues, but getting everybody at the table and collectively resolve it. So I think Saker's doing a great job. They've done tremendous basin, and seeing what they're doing here. We're on the right path, that the request for more communication. To be able to build a solution.
Thank you, Mike. Don't
Oh, well. Lo que se relaciona a la persona de habla hispana como yo. La cosa que nos ha funcionado es una barrera que nos pasa a nosotros. Eso que también nos limita a participar en.
So what I want to comment on is the language barrier of us who speak Spanish. It's something that's been a real issue. Fully participating in meetings such as this.
Yo estoy aquí involucrado porque en realidad yo vi esa necesidad tan.
And in fact, that's the reason that I personally am here. I became part of such a real challenge that our community is facing.
Nos ayuda bastante. Yo siento que es la buena voluntad que está ahí siempre convocándonos a la reunión. Y pues como les digo, la necesidad que tenemos.
This is just the goodwill that we see from the rest of our group and gathers us for these meetings. It truly has been helpful.
Creo que sí es mucho el trabajo que se tiene que hacer, pero más que nada, a mí me gustaría como, yo entiendo todo lo que han comentado, pero sí se ocupa ponerle corazón a esto, porque ponernos en la situación de los que necesitan verdaderamente la ayuda.
So I really do, I really do appreciate, of course, the efforts that everybody's made so far, and I really appreciate everybody else's comments as well. I think what I want to add to this is just that there's still a lot of work to be done, and that it needs to be something in which we pour our hearts into. Our hearts need to be involved because people are genuinely affected by this.
Y porque en nuestro lugar hasta nos podemos como tímidos, se puede decir que pensamos que no es fácil que volteen hacia nosotros, ¿verdad? Que es una comunidad que está siempre trabajando, no tenemos tiempo para participar en reuniones, y, pero sí necesitamos que volteen hacia nosotros. Y pues yo agradezco mucho a nuestro grupo, hablando a mi lado, que ellos con su ser bilingües, la ventaja de ser bilingües, nos conectan con ustedes.
So we really need to put ourselves in the shoes of those who feel the way I do. Honestly, for many in our community, it is hard. You might feel shy, we might feel timid, right? Saying, hey, we need help, or hey, look at us. But the truth is that we do need to look at those people. We need to see who is being affected. And I really, really appreciate the efforts of my co-members on the board here, or rather our colleagues, for example, Brandon, who's bilingual, helps me out a lot. Several of you are, and we do appreciate that. But we really do need to make an effort to look towards those who need that help and are perhaps afraid to ask for it because we need it.
Pues, y estoy muy contento, la verdad, de existe SWRCB y todas las personas que quieren hacer algo por nuestra comunidad, y los animo a que no se cansen, porque hay mucho trabajo y mucha necesidad. Y yo, pues, es mi última junta, pero si por mí fuera, yo quisiera seguir adelante, ayudar lo más que pudiera. Pero a veces, oye, me canso y tengo que ir a dar un descansito a mi país, a México. Muchas gracias.
And so I'm very, very happy for what SAFER has done for us already and for all the effort that's been made by this group. I really appreciate it. I would just encourage you, please, don't give up. There's still a lot to do. I've really enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time here with you guys. If I could, I would continue. But unfortunately, of course, I also get tired, and I'm looking forward to a little bit of rest and maybe even went back to my country, Mexico. But I just want to say thank you guys, and I really appreciate being here.
Muchas gracias, Don Silverio. Thank you so much, Don Silverio. You brought up a lot of important points around language barriers for domestic love programs and the reminder that people are really affected. So we have to bring our hearts to this work. So thank you so much. We've got about 5 more minutes, so we'll take Rami and maybe 1 or 2 more additional people, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you, everyone. This has been a great discussion. I'm just listening to everybody. We hear the challenges. One challenge that I think we have to look at from the funding side is when grant dollars are made available to extend mains, they also should be made available to, connect those service laterals to those individual. That's a challenge. I mean, here, probably.
Thank you, Mommy. Harry?
Adriana, I'd love to give you stuff to.
Yes, bring it.
I think you gotta I agree on a road show. Once you get this domestic well strategy, is take it out and seriously go to these areas and invite this group and. You come to us in these local areas, we'll find the contacts and get them around the table to describe, what are you thinking? What's the state thinking as in its draft form? You have your public comment period as you always would, but to get out in these communities, you'll get an earful, I think, of things that you may not hear otherwise.
Yeah, great recommendation, Harry. Thank you for that.
I was waiting to hear for it. No, I've already said that.
Sorry, I saw there was a couple more questions that I didn't.
Yes, we'll go with Shannon and then we'll go Eric and then Jim.
Yeah, very, they're kind of right on topic is there's a lot of great things that have been going on in different areas and some success and some not so much. And I think that as I'm hearing all the comments from around the table, having some sort of summit, because there is a lot of education outlets out there right now. There's a lot of information, as you mentioned, where do you go for information? There's all kinds of social media. So developing a strategy of education, awareness, testing, and then providing a best way forward while keeping the community at ease with what we're doing, I think is really key in all of this. But having that summit to bring folks around the table, but also boots on the ground to develop a strategy that can be released, I think is real key first piece. So.
Thank you for that recommendation. Eric?
Yeah, I just wanted to, saw the question on the county still, how do you support them in local best? I think it's a good question. I sympathize with what Stephanie shared. There's a lot of counties that already. I think one of the things that's really important to do is to limit the problems before they get to where they are. And I think current well permitting standards cause a lot of challenges on local level for domestic wells. I think I know that SAFER is not a regulatory program, but the board should be advancing standards that protect small water wells, like domestic wells, and so that's legislation, if that's guidance, but guidance around what kind of wells are being permitted on a local level, because there's a lot of impacts that are being caused because of it. Because some wells are permitted that probably should not be permitted. And then in terms of the cost sharing and co-funding model, just to be short. Cost sharing should be proportionate to impact bonds. So whatever agency, whatever entity is responsible, their overall contribution to the impact should be proportionate to what the solution. Like who should be contributing to the solution costs.
Thank you, Eric. And then Jim, we'll have you close our session.
Yeah, I just looking at that last one about SAFER program, just supporting counties and how it can build that relationship. I think that is a big problem. I kind of believe Messina County is a very large county. They go 90,000 people total, very diverse. From the way that host inland. We have one GSA, but the county health department that handles the well testing and everything is challenged, with all that they do, limited budgets, and I don't know how to level that playing field across the state, I've tried to engage the county with these programs of safer that, you know, would be, you know, money for the county to utilize, and it's been hard to get their ear, you know, to take on another responsibility. Even though the money's available, they feel that, you know, there's just too many other, you know, priorities. And so there has to be some way to, you know, level that understanding and, you know, maybe influence how, I don't know, influence might be the wrong word, but just try to get a better response from the council. That I personally, I think it's a high priority, but they have competing priorities, so I don't know how to get that influence again that word to them, that this isn't a health issue that, you know, they should be taking on. So I don't know if this safer can help in that respect, but outreach.
Yeah, supporting with outreach
Yeah.
and multiple capacity issues.
Eating priorities, a lot of priorities, but, you know, public health, drinking water, it's big. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Could I maybe summarize just a couple of things that I've heard?
Yes.
So definitely heard a bunch about bringing groups together, trying to get that knowledge and bring it together and then share it out. Talk about like workshops, best practices, catalog, some kind of clearinghouse that the state could host that would help direct people where they wanted to go. I think we heard about specific priorities for safer, you know, like both on the funding side as well as on how it interacts with consolidations. And then I think more organized communication from the state is what I was hearing. And also just on the communication side, just, you know, how do we get the message out there? I think that's still something that everybody's working on. I think it's like, you know, it's like a bigger group, like figuring out what has worked. They're talking to the communities, taking this out in the community, getting and getting input, and then just the whole idea of building the relationships with counties and others locally who are gonna be the ones who really to address things. And so I just wanted to, those were some of the ideas that I wanted to thank everybody for the discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that summary, Andrew. Before we wrap up, I saw Norma, I saw you lift your hand up. Anything you want to say as we close out this session?
No, just really quickly, I think it just got brought up, that's what I brought down, the communication between the counties and the state and everything. Like a liaison type thing, maybe when something comes up off the county and either they don't have resources like you mentioned, or they don't have the knowledge. So you know, staffing. With the summary.
Awesome. Great suggestion, Norma. And thank you, everyone. This has been really helpful. We will take it back and process it internally and bring this back to a subsequent safer advisory group meeting. So thank you for all of the input. I'll pass it back to Alma to take us to the next agenda item.
Thank you, everyone, for that. And also remind everyone, also there's index cards. So if there's things that come to your mind afterwards, please write it down. You can always send me an email, but we'll be sure to also get to some of these while we're on the bus. But after that, they could also be part of our meetings, meeting minutes. And we'll go to the next slide. And the next slide. Thank you. So for this next portion, we are going to introduce Brian Potter with Division of Drinking Water. And for this next portion, we have about 30 minutes. We're gonna break it down 10 minutes each presenter. But again, any questions that come to you, please write them down in the index card and we'll be sure to collect them. Also, when you speak or you have a question, we'll ask you to also project your voice just to ensure that the audio is getting picked up, and also state your name just for our notes purposes. Thank you. Brian?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming and attending. And it's my pleasure to talk about our safer goals and some of the progress we are making towards getting small water systems or any water system from a status of failing to now compliant and serving safe drinking water to their communities. We could go to the next slide. I'll recap for everybody our safer goals. And you could think of it as when this program started, where were we at? How can we progress forward? So we start with goal 1, which is previous slide still. People in communities and schools that didn't have access to safe drinking water now have it. You could think of at the start of our program, what are the systems that were having issues? We want to make sure that they are the systems that we're focusing on amongst all of the issues we have. We kind of call this group of systems our 2019 cohort. You'll see that term kind of reappear as we progress through the presentation. Goal 2, all communities and schools without safe drinking water are on track to getting lasting solutions in place as swiftly as feasible. And this encompasses all failing water systems, not only the 2019 cohort, but the systems that land on our failing list, which you could think of are the violations that we all hear about, nitrates, arsenic, 1,2,3 TCP. Those are examples of violations that land a water system on the failing list. And then lastly, goal number 3, California's most vulnerable communities and schools are transitioning to be resilient and prevent cycles of failure. So it's one of the things we consider is not only solving the problems that are right in front of us, but how can we be sure that these problems aren't going to show up again and again and again. We want to get systems out of those cycles of failure. A lot of our work around that is consolidating small water systems to larger water systems that are more robust in nature, experience economies of scale that really allow them to be sustainable. So those are our goals that kind of guide our program. We'll go to the next slide. So as it relates to our 2019 failing cohort systems, we're tracking, are those systems progressing and have they returned to compliance? And what you see in front of you here, and I'll move kind of quickly because of time, is just by year, these systems returning to compliance. And going through and making sure violations are resolved, and when they're resolved, we return to compliance. And then we have a projection for the same group of systems, the 2019 cohort. When do we anticipate them returning to compliance? And you can see we still have some systems that we're targeting to get done by the end of this year and as we move into the future years. One of our later slides talk about recurring failing systems that return to the list. So as you get further out, you may go, oh, 2032, that's a long way out. It could be that that water system is experiencing a different issue. We solved the nitrate problem, now we have to solve the TCP problem. So that's kind of baked into our 2019 cohort systems. So I'll move on to the next slide for the sake of time. For the same 2019 cohort systems, we're not just tracking, the end date, but how do you get to that end date is through a series of project phases. You could start out here, I just have them delineated by, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through 10. What really you should think about is 1 represents we just started failing and we need to get engaged, probably need a corrective action plan that kind of is going to spell out how we'll return to compliance, as well as getting technical assistance resources from DFA to start the project and get it to completion. Right around the middle mark, you're going to see, systems that are in the planning and design phase of a project. So we conceptualize what they can do, and now we're moving forward. And then towards the end, you're going to have construction and then returning to compliance in the latter phases. So this is tracking of the failing systems that are still in our 2019 cohort. Where are they at? And it informs the previous slide of where will they be and when will they return to compliance. Next slide, please. For the 2019 cohort systems, our goal is to have 90% of our 2019 cohort systems return to compliance by 2030. So as you can see, these charts start to make sense. From the earliest one, you have some systems that are pushing into 2031, 32, etc. But our goal is that we'll hit 90%. Based on our projections, we're currently at 92% here. And that fluctuates a little bit based on project progress and if different roadblocks show up as we pursue a project. Different things, as you all hear about, show up and that may cause delays, or in some circumstances, we can improve the timeline. The two charts below kind of give the number of systems in our 2019 66 systems. 170 of those have been returned to compliance, and then the corresponding populations on the right. So we're looking at you know, just over 1 million people in our 2019 failing cohort, and then of those 630,000-ish people have been returned to compliance. So that's you know, tracking not only system count but population impacted. Moving into Safer Goal 2. I'll be really quick here. This is focusing on, are systems on track and do they have a plan? And we often talk about corrective action plans. So when a system fails or lands on the failing list, we want to make sure that that system has a plan in place and starts pursuing that plan within a timeline that we establish that is reasonable, aggressive but reasonable, right? So we're in this current phase of making sure every system has an accepted corrective action plan. That informs our project timelines. As you can see from the previous slides, we're pretty much dialed in on our 2019 cohort systems. In the future, we're looking to make sure all of our failing systems have accurate corrective action plans that are reasonable and aggressive, and that will start informing more of our charts that I'm showing you for those systems that aren't in the 2019 cohort. So you could read through some of the information there. Jumping to the next slide. In regards to technical assistance, this is information from our Division of Financial Assistance, which you know we partner with to getting these systems off the failing list. DFA has 361 active work plans for our failing water systems. You can see the breakdown, that's total work plans. You can see the breakdown in categories in the 3 bullets below. So 120 active work plans for our 2019 cohort systems, 106 active work plans for other failing systems, and then 135 TA work plans handling non-failing systems, and about half of those are consolidation. So the state board does prioritize consolidation even if you're not failing. And those systems in that group could be at risk or potentially at risk. We don't have that information displayed here, but that's something to consider as well. And then of that TA work, 131 of those projects will result in a construction application, meaning they're going to move forward with a project. And of that subset, 44 have complete applications currently, so they're in the process of securing funding. And then 50 projects are estimated to have a complete application by June 30th, 2026, halfway through next year. So that again aligns with the safer tracking work that we presented, and then also how DFA is tracking progress on their side of the house. Next slide, please. We've got 2 more minutes for a few more slides, so I'll be really quick. This chart here is tracking as from the, how do I describe this? When a system lands on the failing list to when they're returned to compliance, what is the average duration of them failing? So what you can see here is systems that failed in 2017 and have now returned to compliance. That average is 5.5 years. Something to note though, as we have, systems that have failed, within a given year, systems that are still failing, they're going to end up contributing to this chart. They're just not displayed. So we should see, probably you'll think 2020, when a system started failing, it makes sense that if you've returned to compliance, it was about a little over 3 years ago, but we still have systems that haven't been returned to compliance. And this is just tracking the duration on the failing list. So this chart will change over time as more systems return to compliance. Okay, moving into the next slide, goal 3. Focused on consolidations, we have a goal of 20 consolidations per year. To date, 173 systems have been consolidated to larger systems, impacting 360,000 people. In the chart below, you'll see the categorization of a non-failing system. So that could be potentially at risk, not at risk, or at risk. And then also the subset of systems that were failing that we consolidated. So our goal is 20 per year. We'll hit that as of this data pool, which is from, the third quarter back. I already know that we've consolidated at least 20, and we'll probably have a couple more by the end of the year. So that's a big achievement in providing sustainable solutions to systems. And then couple more slides here. I'll just touch on the next one. This is a breakdown of systems that are in a consolidation project or in the process of consolidation, broken down by safer status. And then the pie chart on the right breaks down of those systems that are failing, what are they failing for? So you can look and see kind of the large 6 categories of failure types that we're seeing. Most systems are a primary MCL violation as it relates to them consolidating. Next slide. I know I'm going rapid fire. You can ask me questions during the break. Water systems that have repeat failures, we're tracking that to see systems that have failed before. We got them off the list. If they return again, we want to see how often is that happening? When is it happening? 2 notes, the red marks here, 13 in the second quarter of 2021 and the second quarter of 2024. That's when the failing criteria was expanded. So you should see a slight increase. And that means, you know, the system was on the cusp of failure. The criteria didn't meet. When we expanded the criteria some, they now became failing again. So we're tracking that. And then lastly, this is about the recurring failures and emergency requests. Next slide, please. So we had 38 systems that have had multiple emergency requests since 2019. And in the third quarter of 2025, we didn't have any other repeat requests for emergency funding. So that's a good sign. Some systems are staying a little more resilient. I'd like to thank everybody for their time, and they can ask me questions during the break, unless we have a little time, but I don't know if we do.
It's 10:17, maybe we could take one question, but definitely I'll encourage everyone to write their questions also on the index card. But we can take one question.
Quick question. The elementary school where Governor Newsom launched the program, do they have safe drinking water?
Can you remind me the name? There's a lot of systems floating around in my head.
I don't remember the name. I'm so sorry.
Does someone know the name of the elementary school? What was that? Tombstone was a domestic well community, and we're currently in the process of finishing up that project. The school I'm blanking on. I apologize.
No problem.
Riverview Elementary.
Riverview Elementary, I will find out.
Thank you.
And then I see we could do Eric, and then we'll go into the next presentation.
Thanks for the presentation, Brian. I was looking at the consolidation since 2019 chart. And I was just looking at the ratio of failing versus non-failing consolidations. I was just wondering, what's the reasoning that the State Water Board is like consolidating or not failing systems, consolidating systems? I understand like maybe some of these you're building resilience, so those systems don't go into failing status, but just might share a little bit about that.
Yeah, something that chart doesn't highlight. It's a chart, I don't know, a few slides back. That doesn't necessarily highlight what funded that project or what achieved the consolidation. There are many consolidations that occur on behalf of like district field operations doing good work. I've worked a lot with Mike, and it's like I call Mike, you know, hey, Golden Key Apartments is in your area right across the street. Can we get them consolidated? In circumstances like that, there is some influence from DEW or even DFA to help motivate a consolidation, even though it doesn't necessarily land into like a project. So that's an example. For the systems that are failing, that number is low, but if you think to when the program started, it was really about business generation, so to speak. A lot of these failing systems weren't getting the resources to affect any type of project. And so we should see that trajectory go up because there's 125 failing systems in consolidation projects, whereas the funding and the project develops, we'll see that tick up as they accomplish the project. So it's more about cataloging everything that's being done. Some of it is funded directly from us or in early stages, and some of it is influence and relationships with our, you know, regulated large water systems pushing consolidations to happen. I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but like I could attest because I've worked with Mike directly. There's many consolidations that were on the back of the city of Porterville really helping out, in the field helping to engage those systems and push them towards consolidation. So that's a little bit of why. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Brian. We're gonna go ahead and go into the next presentation. If you can go to the next slide. Thank you. And we'll yield the mic to Jeff Wetzel for a presentation on the fund expenditure plan.
Thank you. Good morning. Nice to see everyone and nice to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about this year's fund expenditure plan and then also just some funding updates for everybody. So last we met, the draft fund expenditure plan for this year was out for public comment. And since then, we took it to our board in early November and adopted it. Next slide, please. So for this slide, we're going to lay out basically the anticipated available funding for this fiscal year for the broader SAFER program. So basically all our funding sources that can address drinking water solutions. That totals about 1.32 billion. You'll see in the top right is the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund, around 320 million. And then our other large pot there is the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. We do have some general obligation bonds, the newer Prop 4, around 100 million. And then we also have some older Props 1 and 68. There is some greenhouse gas reduction funding for drinking water infrastructure projects there. And then lastly, we have some funding available for small disadvantaged communities addressing emerging contaminants. I'll also mention that since we are into this fiscal year, we do have some pending funding commitments. There's around $130 million pending for technical assistance master agreement amendments. And then we do have our expedited drinking water grant program, which is round 5 that is kicked off and is underway. There's around 30 projects in that round 5, and those 30 projects will equate to around 330 million in funding commitments. And then lastly, we have 24 million in amendments to our regional programs that assist domestic wells. Next slide, please. So this is the SAFER funding priorities that are in the fund expenditure plan. They largely look the same from the past couple of years, so hopefully folks are familiar with them. In that fourth text box, there is a slight update this year, which says continue existing programs to support communities served by domestic wells and state small water systems where other assistance is not available. And that is getting at the conversation that we just had about domestic wells and how there's other programs and mitigation programs in place throughout the state. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this is just to highlight the process that we used this year. We did release the draft FEP in June. We had 2 public meetings in July, the board workshop and the SAFER advisory group meeting. DFA staff also did host informational sessions for interested stakeholders. And all that resulted in 9 comment letters on the draft FEP, which was adopted by the board in early November of this year. Next slide, please. So I'm going to walk through just a couple quick updates that was made to the draft FEP based off of some of the comments that we had. Generally speaking, when we go to the final FEPs, we do update tables and figures and associated text, complete the data reporting out to the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. For the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund targets specifically, which the FEP does identify, technical assistance was increased as well as direct operation and maintenance support. And with that increase, there was an associated decrease to the construction funding target for failing public water systems. Do keep in mind that for construction projects, there are other pots of money that can address those needs for that solution type. Lastly here, the domestic well state small strategy section did update that to incorporate some education and outreach components. And then we also indicate that in coming years, there should be an implementation plan developed. Next slide, please. Regarding interim assistance, there was some clarification made that while the expectation for interim assistance like bottled water or hauled water should be about 2 years is the expectation, that can be extended if there's special consideration for example, for example, for consolidation projects where the solution might take a little bit longer. And then we've also clarified that references to alternative compliance or mitigation programs are not intended to expand or change those programs as administered. For technical assistance, text was added to clarify that the steps that were shown in that section are typical for planning projects going to TA. But did acknowledge that those are not always the exact steps that a community will take in that process towards their long-term solution. And then I'll also mention that our TA program is already working closely with TA providers to do an evaluation and come up with some criteria and some potential improvements. Next slide, please. For planning and construction funding eligibility for public water systems, the text was copied from our drinking water state revolving intended use plan that was adopted by the board in August. And then basically that language is added to the fund expenditure plan and it defers to the intended use plan for eligibility criteria. But it was also noted in there that the deputy director of DFA does have the discretion to approve funding outside of that, as long as it's consistent with the FEP and statute. And then lastly, there were some clarifications made to some certain measures capturing some of our metrics and methodology. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the funding progress that we've made in the first quarter of this fiscal year. So the first 3 months of this fiscal year. Next slide, please. So across the top are some funding commitments to highlight here for public water systems. Technical assistance has either approved or amended about 8.48 million in work plans. There's been about 1.75 million in planning grants executed or amended. And then likewise about 24 million for construction grant agreements or amendment. Along the bottom there is highlighting some of the domestic well support. So in the first 3 months of this fiscal year, there's been 135 new households that are now receiving bottled or bulk water. There's been 120 domestic wells tested. And within that 3-month window, there's 51 new wells drilled or repaired. Next slide, please. So this slide is showing us statewide the new communities for water systems that are now receiving our assistance, and it's broken down by the solution type. So there's about 60 new communities receiving technical assistance, 10 communities that are now having planning activities, and then 11 for construction solution type. I'll note that the green there does show some non-failing systems or systems that are not at risk, and kind of gets at what Brian said. Some of those communities could be for solutions for consolidation or for hexachrome or PFAS, where there are exceedances, but has not necessarily landed them on the failing list, but they're still eligible for funding. Next slide, please. This slide is going back 10 years, so we're kind of getting outside of that Q1 update. But it's basically just to show the breadth and the work that's being done under technical assistance in the planning. The take home here really is if you just look at the end of that chart in 2025, there's 357 active work plans under technical assistance, which is a good amount. And you also notice that the new work plans are being added at a rate a little bit higher than the closed out work plans. All this is to say is that DFA is being strategic about adding new work plans and really focusing on getting the existing work plans across the finish line and closed out. Next slide, please. This is my last slide, and this is just kind of a snapshot to cover some of our domestic well assistance, basically for the last 6 years. So in total, there's been about 242 million in domestic well support. A good chunk of that, 60%, has already been spent and dispersed to the households. Some of our domestic well programs in the light green there does still have some funding remaining. And then some of our other domestic well programs do need amendments. So we're working on that and we're adding some additional funding as needed. And then the bar chart or the temperature gauge on the right side of that chart, are just meant to show that so far this fiscal year, we have about 24 million pending in amendments. And the fund expenditure plan did identify about 82 million as a target for this fiscal year to mix domestic well support. Next slide. That's it from me.
Thank you, Jeff. If there's anybody who can take one question, if anyone has a question that came to your mind. Otherwise, you can continue writing them down on the index cards and we'll get to them. I'm gonna check real quick if there's anything also online. Any questions from folks here? James, go ahead.
So Jeff, you were saying that, I forget what the number was that was going into domestic well, like all.
24 million?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So is there any tracking mechanism like Brian has done for systems that were coming in and out of compliance? Or is there kind of a tracking thing that is being implemented to see once a domestic well is, assisted, is it now safe, or one of those that you have to do? Yeah, is it ongoing kind of thing?
Sure. I mean, short answer is no, the domestic well assistant has not had that framework like the public water systems have. But our grant agreements do have pretty extensive reporting and tracking of people enrolled and completion dates. So the data is there, but it hasn't really had kind of that holistic.
So addressed and pretty much now safe.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff. We're gonna go ahead and go on to the next presentation, and this one will be with Amanda Simpson. She's online. Amanda, can you hear us well?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Excellent.
Can you hear me?
Amanda? Yes.
Good. Well, good morning. My name is Amanda Simpson, and I'm a legislative analyst in the Office of Legislative Affairs. And I'm here today to give you an update on the 2025 legislative session. OLA is the primary link between the water boards and the legislature, Cal EPA, and the governor's office. We analyze high priority bills, represent the water boards on legislative matters, and respond to inquiries from legislators and their staff. Each analyst carries a subject matter portfolio, and mine is drinking water. So that includes things like MCLs, PFAS, lead and hexchrome, small water systems and mutuals, ELAP, recycled water, and low income rate assistance. Today, I'm going to walk you through the drinking water adjacent legislation that made it to the governor's desk. And next slide, by the way. So first, I'm just going to level set really quick and just give a brief overview of the legislative process. So you probably know this, but so bills start in the Assembly or the Senate, and then they move through the Policy and Fiscal Committees before floor votes. If they pass both houses, they go to the governor, who can sign, veto, or allow a bill to become law without a signature, which rarely happens. California also operates on a 2-year legislative cycle. So 2025 was the first year in that cycle as an odd numbered year. And bills that didn't move may return in 2026 unless they're considered dead. The bill text for all of these bills can be found on leginfo.legislature.gov, and links are also included in your SAFER material packet, which I think is printed, but hopefully there's an online version as well. And if not, I'm happy to send you any links that you might need. So for the drinking water legislation of 2025, I want to give like a big high level picture first. So like this year's legislature was heavily focused on affordability and housing. There was some major CEQA streamlining through the SB 131, AB 130 trailer bills. The legislature also extended cap and trade, which helps fund the SAFER program, and appropriated $3.5 billion in Prop 4 funding, some of which went to water quality and safe drinking water to the State Water Board. And then The next thing I'll show you is the list of drinking water legislation that made it to the governor's desk. So the first one is AB 1096 by Assemblymember Connolly. This was a lead in schools bill. AB 1096 increases transparency around lead testing in school and child care, drinking water systems. Under the federal LCRI rules, the lead and copper rule improvement rules, the community water systems must offer lead sampling. So this bill requires them to document who they contacted, who accepted or declined testing, and the test results. And water systems will need to then submit that information to the state water board, and then we will publish that data online and make it easier for parents and community members to see where the lead testing occurred, so at which schools, and where risk may still remain. The second bill, and that was signed by the governor. The second bill that was signed by the governor is SB 31, which is a recycled water bill. This bill expands where disinfected tertiary recycled water can be used, so the purple pipe, including outdoor areas and parks, common areas of residential developments, and certain food-related facilities where no food preparation occurs. And this bill is going to require the State Water Board to update Title 22 to reflect these expanded uses while maintaining public health protections. SB 72, not exactly a drinking water bill, but I think it may still be of interest, so I included it. The California Water Plan was signed by the governor. So SB 72 is going to update the California Water Plan. DWR, in coordination with the State Water Board, is going to start incorporating planning target of 9 million acre feet of additional water by 2040 to support communities, ag, and the environment under future climate conditions. It is also going to expand public participation in the advisory committee. So that's going to include expanded participation opportunities for tribes, labor, environmental justice, and environmental stakeholders. SB 454, McNerney, was a PFAS mitigation fund bill, and that was vetoed by the governor. This bill would have authorized the State Water Board to receive federal, private, or other non-state funding for PFAS cleanup and deposit it into a PFAS mitigation fund. This bill was vetoed by the governor, stating in his veto message that it was premature to create a fund without a dedicated funding source. SB 466 by Caballero, that was a Chrome 6 liability bill. SB 466 created some liability protections for public water systems, implementing the State Water Board approved compliance plan for Hexchrome, the Hexchrome MCL, as long as they meet the total chromium standard. So the idea here is to protect systems that are acting in good faith while they work towards compliance, and that was signed. And then the last bill, this one's sort of drinking water adjacent, SB 489 by Ergin, permit transparency. So this bill increases transparency for housing developers by requiring public agencies to publish their development approval criteria online. And for the water board, this just means that we would need to make sure our permitting processes relevant to housing, such as water right applications, things like that, are easily accessible. And next slide, please. The second of two slides. So I just want to go over some of the implementation and key timelines with you all. So for AB 1096, the State Water Board is going to need to post that lead data by June 30th, 2028. Community water systems are also going to be required to update consumer confidence reports by December 31st, 2028, with a link to the State Water Board's website that will contain that lead testing data. For SB 31, the State Water Board will need to update Title 22 and complete related rulemaking. There is no deadline in the bill for that. SB 72 will also be updated December 31st, 2028. So that'll be a big year. And every 5 years thereafter, which is, I believe, the normal update schedule. And then SB 466, that bill was signed into law in 2025, so it's going to take, those liability protections will take effect January 2026. And if there are time for questions, I'm happy to take them. If not, definitely feel free to write your questions down and our office will get back to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Are there any questions for Amanda? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could speak at all to Senate Bill 131, which I think extends a secret statutory exemption for a lot of the safer work. Not to put a spot here, and then maybe 1207 and SB 840 sort of extending the funding and I believe the safer program. They're relatively long.
Yeah, I think for 131, let me get back to you on that. That is a great question to send to our office because that is not a bill that is, those bills are not in my portfolio, but I'm definitely happy to connect you with the analysts whose ever portfolio it landed in, and they can get back to you. And then for 131, we typically don't include budget trailer bills in our portfolios, but again, I'm happy to, if you send that question to our office, I'm happy to look into it still for you. I just don't know off the top of my head.
No problem. Thanks.
And what was the second bill number?
Oh, it's talking about Senate Bill 840 and 1207, which I think we're sort of extending the greenhouse gas funding and the safer.
Thank you. I'm also just making notes.
Yeah,
Follow up.
I'm making note of that too, so we can follow up with you. 840.
Thank you, Anne. Other questions? I have one more question. No, and I don't see questions online. We can go to the next slide. We've all been waiting for a break. Let's go ahead and take a quick 5-minute break and then we'll come back. There's restrooms right across the room. There's also right across the hallway if you like to take a little walk.
Okay, so we're done. But for now, it's allowed, but in the future, you're right, like, for that, for sure, we got. They got.
Thanks so much, everyone. And we're going to go to the next slide. Before we start with this next presentation, my mistake, I didn't introduce the advisory group members that are online, that are joining us virtually. So we're gonna have the advisory group members that are joining us through Zoom. Please introduce yourselves. I know we have Don James, Tequita Jefferson, Isabel Solorio, and Soren Nelson online. If you can please unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Good morning, Soren Nelson with the Association of California Water Agencies.
Thank you, Soren. Don James. Hopefully you still can hear us. Tequita Jefferson.
Hi, I'm Tequita Jefferson.
Thank you, Tequita, for joining us. I would appreciate you.
Thank you.
Señora Isabel, si nos escucha, ¿podría presentarse?
Hola, buenos días.
Hello, good morning. My name is Isabel Solorio.
En la comunidad de Lanare, California.
I'm in Lanier.
Muchas gracias, señora Isabel. Creo que funcionó perfecto. Thank you, everyone.
Sí.
Excellent. So we can go ahead and kick off the next presentation, and it's going to be a presentation of the Central Coast Drinking Water. The next phase is actually a presentation of the tours that we're making and the projects that we'll be highlighting. And so we can go to the next slide. I'll yield the floor to staff in the Central Coast Water Boards, Julia Dyer and James Bishop.
I'm Julia Dyer with the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. Next slide. We provided this slide so that you can have our information if you, we're going to hang around today, James and I. But if you have questions after this meeting, this is the way that you can contact us. And we're both going to share about some programs that are being implemented through the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. Before James and I speak about specific programs, I'd like to underscore the fact that safe drinking water is one of the Central Coast Water Board's highest priorities. We prioritize addressing discharges that may impact sources of drinking water. In cases where there are impacts to drinking water, we prioritize replacement water. We also assess domestic drinking water and provide that information to the public. Finally, the Central Coast Water Board has adopted resolutions affirming both the human right to water and our commitment towards advancing racial equity and environmental justice on the Central Coast. Next slide. So I'm going to speak to you about the Central Coast Drinking Water Well Testing Program, which conducts free and voluntary drinking water well testing of domestic wells throughout the Central Coast. The data generated through this program allows participants to make informed decisions about their drinking water. The testing includes 18 parameters, 5 of which have primary maximum contaminant levels for drinking water, or MCL. Anonymized data is available to view and download from SWRCB GIS, And I also included in the meeting materials, instructions on how to view and download that data through GIS. One of the many factors that contributes to the success of this program is coordinating with local agencies and partners. The primary collaborations are with the Community Water Center, which is represented here today, and counties throughout the region. You can learn more about this program by going to centralcoastwelltesting.org. Next slide. The current program has sampled more than 800 wells over the past 7 years. And the exceedance rate has consistently hovered around 45%, meaning 45% of wells exceed the primary MCL for at least one contaminant. The most commonly found contaminants are nitrate, arsenic, and hexavalent-chromium. Although particular to here in northern Monterey County, there is a disproportionately high amount of detections of 1,2-TCP, which is a legacy pesticide, and we are thankful for our partnership with the Community Water Center and their projects that are addressing that issue. And for those who would like to take a deeper dive into program details, I have provided a link to my most recent annual update to the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. And then I'm going to pass things on to James for the next few slides, and then after James, we'll both be available to answer any questions. Go ahead, James.
Thanks, Julia. So I'm going to be talking about what the Central Coast Water Board's Irrigated Lands Program is doing with respect to addressing groundwater quality impacts and in particular domestic well water quality impacts. And much of the work that I'm going to be presenting by the Irrigated Lands Program is complementary to the program that Julia just described, because the Irrigated Lands Program is largely addressing on-farm domestic wells, whereas Julia's program addresses off-farm domestic wells, and together they theoretically address the total population of domestic wells. I want to start by sharing this slide, which essentially summarizes the water quality problem and provides the context for the next couple of slides I'll share. And this is a little bit of a complicated plot, so I'll walk you all through it, but it essentially shows the results of on-farm domestic well water quality sampling required by the Irrigated Lands Program in 2024. The nitrate concentration is shown along the horizontal axis. Different groundwater subbasins with lots of irrigated agriculture are shown along the vertical axis, and the distribution of well sample results is shown by the box and whisker plots. The number of wells sampled is the number after the N, ranging from several dozen to 150 wells or more. And the important statistic here is this percentage exceeding the MCL, or the exceedance rate, shows the number of wells in each basin that exceeded the MCL for nitrate in 2024, and that ranges from 28% to nearly 60% of wells sampled in the basin. So point being, there's a lot of wells that exceed the MCL for nitrate. Nitrate is one of the biggest water quality problems that the region deals with, and the Irrigated Lands Program requirements are largely focused on addressing this groundwater nitrate problem. One other thing I'll add is that these are just on-farm domestic wells. This does not account for nitrate migration away from farms in groundwater, impacting off-farm domestic wells, state small water systems, and public water systems. Next slide, please. So this slide just kind of describes the monitoring efforts required by the Irrigated Lands Program. So for nitrate, the Irrigated Lands Program samples about 2,000 domestic wells per year and 3,300 irrigation wells per year. In addition, about 500 wells are sampled for 123 TCP. The figure on the right is just a screen grab of our Irrigated Lands Program dashboard, which summarizes lots of the implementation efforts done by the Irrigated Lands Program, including the results of water quality sampling. If you're interested in digging in more, that's a really cool dashboard to play around with. And then next slide. And then this is the last slide, and it is a very high level overview of the alternative water supply program that we are developing. This will provide replacement water, both interim and long-term drinking water solutions to residents relying on groundwater impacted by nitrate from agriculture. So there's some fairly specific constraints, nitrate impact from agriculture, but it will provide short and long-term solutions. We estimate there are about 3,000 domestic wells, 118 state small water systems, and 17 public water systems that are affected, impacting about 14,000 residents. The program is in development. We're anticipating draft regulatory language in spring of 2026 and final requirements adopted in summer of 2027. And the program will be funded by growers with co-funding as needed. And that's it for our update. Thank you all for giving us the opportunity to share.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Julia. We can go to the next slide. If there's any questions on the drinking water programs here at Central Coast that they presented on. If there's some questions also online, feel free to raise your hand using the icon and you can call in your name. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. One question.
Well, not really a question, but more of a statement. I know I do a lot of work with the NSF Joint Committee and Standards as it pertains to claims. And there's been a lot of work done with Stantec as it pertains to nitrates in the drinking water here in the state of California. There are some extremely high levels of nitrates where products aren't tested to those high level of nitrates as an influent. A lot of that has just been completed and we expect sometime next year that'll be officially standardized so that point of use, point of entry products will be able to be tested and certified at a very high level of nitrate level for these communities. So more of a comment in regards to these affected, some of these that have very high level of nitrates in the drinking water. So just a comment in regards to that.
Yeah, that's great. I wasn't aware that that work was going on. I was aware of the limitations as it related to the use of POE for based on the nitrate concentration, but glad to hear that work is being done to raise that threshold.
Yes, and that was part of the plan where Stantec was awarded some of these plan initiatives of the SAFER program. So this is one of those initiatives where they're working on development of standards so that these products can meet these emerging contaminants like 1,2,3 TCP here in the state of California.
And I'll just close by saying that, for those of you who know of anyone on the Central Coast with a private domestic well, I brought some flyers. And I'd be happy to give them to you. You can distribute them to anyone that would like to take advantage of the free well test.
Thank you, Julia.
Follow up with Shannon, please. Chad, is Chad Fisher working with them on that work?
Affirmative, yeah.
Thank you, Chad. We'll go ahead and go to the next presentation. And the next slide. Briefly, this is a visual that we had for the presentation on San Lucas. We had Supervisor Chris Lopez give an overview of that community. And this was just to also give folks an idea and a review of the size of the community. And we'll go to the next slide. One more. Thank you. And so we'll introduce Albert Sanchez with Cal Water to speak on the Gavilan Water Company. Albert, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. So I'm sharing a high overview on the next couple slides. My name is Albert Sanchez. I'm with California Water Service. And thank you guys all for being here today. Next slide. So Gavilan Water System, this is the overview shot of that. So this is a consolidation project that we're working on with Cal Water and Gavilan Water System. This one's pretty unique because not just with Gavilan Water System, there's 162 service connections there, but there's 33 connections with 5 other small state water systems. So those include Lagunita, Trihorn, Livingston, Morris, and Martin, all within just that highlighted area there. So this is sort of a really complicated project here. But over the time, Cal Water has partnered with RCAC, the Rural Community Assistance Corps. They were the lead TA with SAFER. So they've been taking the lead on that and working with us. A couple other partners, some stakeholders that we wanted to mention as well was just the Monterey County Environmental Health, MKN Engineering, Division of Drinking Water as well. And then just the Environmental Justice Coalition. Water was the lead advisor back in 2008 when this thing first took off. Fast forward here to sort of 2023, we were able to get a grant for $4.2 million for the main and the service lines. Now to 2025, we're still working on getting some grant funding from getting the laterals from the house to the actual meters. So there's still some components that we're working on with that project. So that's sort of where we're at. We will be visiting this site as well on the tour. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Or any questions?
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a little more. You were talking about, the grant that won't, cover the lateral cost of the mainline extension. What grant is that, funding that project?
Not too sure where the grant came from. I know it's part of Safer Division of Drinking Water, and a financial grant from state agency, so don't have the confirmed agency that did that grant, but
I just assumed, or at least I thought, maybe I'm wrong, that, the SRF projects and a lot of our safer funding utilize, actually covered lateral on mainline extensions, especially on consolidations.
yeah, so this one didn't. This one was just strictly just for the main line and the services and the meter. And they're still working on the details and trying to get the additional grant for the home lines.
It'd be interesting to know the details of the grant you guys are utilizing now. Just to know what that is.
Yeah, we can definitely get some information back to you.
Thank you, fine. So one more question, if not, we can go to the next slide. It will also be this presentation by Albert on Country Meadows Road.
Yeah, so we just wanted to highlight this one. So Country Meadows is in this highlighted area here. Just sort of north of the Gatland project that we just talked about. But this Country Meadows, it's not a consolidation. It's just something that we did. It's owned and operated by California Water Service, and we connected this system to our Salinas main. So our Salinas main is a little bit more robust. It serves over 26,000 customers. So we were able to connect our Country Meadows system to the Salinas main with about 1.5 miles of pipeline. There was only 2 sources of water there, 2 very old wells, and it serves about 107 customers. So with able to make that connection through our infrastructure improvement plans, we were able to connect that water system and install a booster station to boost water to there for backup and reliability, power outages, maybe if a well goes down or something like that, we're able to back up and supply that source. But with those efforts being done, the difference between the Salinas main and Country Meadows with that 1.5 miles of pipeline that we had, we're able to help, some other small states or communities just along the Harrison Road there, because there's some private wells and customers that now are closer to our service area that we're able to connect and help out with. So just a high level. That was not a safer project. It was just something that we wanted to highlight to show that there's things being done out there as well.
Any questions? Albert, will you be joining us in the tour?
I will be on the phone with you guys
Okay,
later.
that's great.
Yep.
Just as an FYI, we will be driving by the communities. We won't actually stop. So I think it'd be great to kind of let us know or highlight when we're driving through the communities that these projects are taking place.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys again.
Thank you, Albert. And we'll go to the next slide. And for the next presentation, I'm going to introduce Amy Wilson and Heather Bash. Oh, actually, thank you. I'll yield the floor to you for the presentation on Prindale Regional Consolidation Project and the Echo Valley School Water System.
Great, thank you, Alma. My name is Heather Bashian. I'm a principal engineer for Bowen Pritchard Consulting Group, and we have been working on a feasibility study for the Prindale Consolidation Project. If you're from the area, I'm sure you've heard about the analyses that have been done in the past. So we're trying to leverage some of that past information, but also come at it with a little bit of a fresh eye. So the Prindale area that we're looking at, or the Granite Ridge area for the folks who are local, we're looking at 37 water systems. Why 37? Those were the ones that were selected. There's a lot of water systems in that area. There are several that are failing and and the rest are all at risk. Those 37 include about just over 500 connections. And to do a full regional consolidation, I'm just doing really high level on this. Let me go to the next slide. We have a picture. This is the area that we're talking about. So to do a full regional consolidation of all of these water systems into one major overall system. We're looking at as you can imagine, probably a pretty expensive project, just shy of 70 million on the capital side. But some of the highlights of developing a project of that scale is that our hydrogeology team looked at the groundwater quality characteristics. There's a lot of constituents in the groundwater in that area. Nitrate, arsenic, obviously, but our uranium, PCP, some other items that are challenging to treat. And with the scale of this project, we could actually reach an affordable water bill for the residents. As was talked about earlier, when you're talking at some of these consolidations or treatment projects for small communities, and $300 or $400 a month water bills are not reasonable. So one of the great things is by going this scale, there is a possibility of getting something that could be a reasonable water bill for the folks that are in the area. So where we're at today in the process is we have done our draft feasibility study. Obviously, the price tag for that solution is very high. So now we're looking at seeing if there's a phased approach where we could do a smaller subset that are nearer to the location that was identified for the water supply wells, and start there and then build on that into the future. So that's kind of a first step that we're looking at, working with our DFAPM for our TA grant. And then we have done one series of multiple community meetings. So if anybody's in the area and would like to be invited to the next set of community meetings, we're happy to extend that so you can hear firsthand. We did have a lot of community members show up, which was great. A lot of trepidation, concern, cautiousness is probably a nice way to put it. But still a lot of interest in understanding what we were doing, what we were trying to evaluate, and how this could potentially benefit them, which we still took as a win. So our next step is to do a webinar to update the communities again and to try to get some buy-in from folks to say, are you willing to continue to explore this opportunity to maybe have a regional water system consolidation project come to your area? There were several systems that were like, absolutely not, we like our own water system, don't talk to us. So we'd like to help them understand what the challenges are of continuing to drink water that's contaminated at the levels that they're dealing with, because a lot of folks just don't quite understand that. So that'll be part of our next efforts in the communities, is to help bring that information, answer questions, and make it an interactive conversation. So that's where we're at in the Prunedale regional consolidation. But as was also mentioned earlier, sometimes these big projects take a very long time to come to fruition. So Amy will talk about another project that we're doing that's in the area that's actually gonna get some traction sooner. Thank you.
I'm Amy Wilson. I'm also with Provo Richard Consulting Group. My main role there is as an environmental planner, but for these TA projects, I act as a community coordinator, which is just a fancy project manager role of just trying to keep everyone headed in the right direction on time and on budget. So you can go to the next slide. The project I'm going to talk about is the Echo Valley School Water System, which will be a stop today. It is, actually, if you go back one more time, I want to show you where it is in relation to, it's right, I believe it's right here. So it's right adjacent to the area that Heather's been working with. So the goal is at some point that this could be a consolidation option for them as well. But for now, we're working on getting them clean drinking water. They currently have one well with a small treatment system on it, but they exceed in arsenic. And so the way that they are managing that is by having to do a lot of backwashing of the system, which is not sustainable long-term. And they still end up with spikes in arsenic. So, part of their compliance action plan, they're having to do extra testing and things to try to keep the water levels under the arsenic threshold. And I do believe they are supplying bottled water for everyone. It's a school site. They have about 570-ish students and faculty on site when the school's operating. So we did a feasibility study. We finished that up last July, and then now we have a full planning project moving forward, working through the engineering report, which part of that is to look at upgrading their treatment system. That ended up being the most feasible option that we've found in the feasibility study. And so they're currently actually working right now on a pilot study, which they started on December 1st. And the way that that was set up, they had some issues. So they need to kind of reorganize how that layout's happening. So they're coordinating with the school to hopefully next Monday run it. It needs to run for about a week. That will help our treatment team at PMP kind of dial in exactly what elements of the water system, treatment system could be upgraded to help provide them with a longer use of those different pieces of it. So that's a really high level. We will, like I said, stop and you'll see the little, they just have a little treatment system. It's really just at the end of its useful life. Schools don't have a lot of funds, so we're trying to come in and help upgrade that system. For that. And our engineering report should be done in April of next year, and then we're looking at getting all the funding applications and everything, you know, the design drawings, the environmental, all completed by October.
Thank you. Heather, we'll go to the next slide. If there's any questions on these two projects, we will be physically making a stop at Echo Valley School today. And you will also be joining us in the tool. If there's any questions. Thank you both, appreciate it. There is a question online. Tukwita, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
It did. Okay, yeah, I unmuted myself. I have a question in regards to the Echo Valley School because they were saying there's a high level of arsenic in the drinking water. Now, these children don't drink this water, correct?
Right, they're supplied with bottled water right now, is my understanding. And also, for the most part, with all the backflushing that they do of their system, they can get the levels down. But they do have a violation because it's an ongoing issue that spikes from time to time.
Okay, because that concerned me due to the fact that I know arsenic can cause a great deal of health problems along with educational problems. So I was just making sure that the children are being protected or trying to be protected because of the health risks. So they are being sought after, right?
Yes, they have bottled water on site.
And community wise?
I don't know about that. The well that they use is only serving the school.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Tukwita. Thank you, Amy. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And for the Springfield Road Moss Land, we'll introduce Roxanne Reimer here with Community Water Center to give us a quick overview of the work that's happening there.
Yes, I've really enjoyed the discussion so far. We've heard a lot of great discussion on interim solutions around domestic wells and then also what that can look like moving into a longer term solution and consolidations. So I think this is a really great example of a project where we were able to start identifying the solution, provide interim solutions, move into what that long-term solution was, and now we're all the way into construction. And so I think this is a really good project example that we can think about when defining domestic well strategies and what can that look like in an individual project. Move on to the next. So for this project, that looks like this is a mobile home park that is a failing public water system, as well as another failing public water system. And then this project encompasses consolidating this entire area, including domestic well households along this alignment here. So there's just over 20 domestic well households that are also being included in this, and there's a total of around 160 households that are included in this project. We celebrated the groundbreaking for this project back in May, and this is anticipated to finish construction around October of next year. I also want to call on my colleague Brandon to say a little bit more about this, and then I'll talk a little bit more about some things that went right in this project.
Yeah, this project, it started with a lot of residents working through the Central Coast Regional Water Board's well testing program. So what we heard about earlier and understanding what's in their drinking water and then talking with each other. So many of those households had been concerned for several decades about the drinking water issues in their area. And it wasn't until a lot of the resources that, thanks to SAFER, that they're able to actually work towards technical assistance projects and get to the point where we are at today. And so those residents have been organized and they're also organizing with neighbors nearby as well to talk about next steps for some of the surrounding parts of this area, but it's really about when we're working with residents and engaging residents door to door, talking with each other, understanding what's in your water and then what you can do about it, that we're actually able to start making progress. And sometimes the conversations are hard, and that's something that we just lean into and talk through. We bring people together as a community and ask some of these questions that are hard so that we can work towards a long-term goal. And so this has been an area that we're celebrating as a victory, where domestic well projects that are difficult can come to a point where I've never seen a picture so beautiful, but pipes in the ground, that's exciting. And I get excited by that. So we should keep finding pictures like this of pipes in the ground and solving problems.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, so I really want to reiterate and highlight what he's saying about really partnering with the community members as a part of this solution. And that is one of the things that really went right in this project. So there's a few, I think it's like 21 or 22 domestic well households that were included here. There was only one domestic well household in this entire area that chose not to participate in this project. So we got over 95% participation of domestic well households in this project. That is something that really went right. That is not easy to achieve, and really partnering with the community throughout this entire project from the very beginning of identifying what the issue was really key to making sure that that could happen. Because when it came time to sign consolidation agreements, no one was surprised or wondering what was going on or, unknowledgeable about this project. So that was really key to getting that participation. But it's also key for other things. For example, when you do consolidation projects, you're much more likely to need easements or land acquisition, and having that strong partnership with community members was really key to getting the easements that we needed and making sure that those were moving along, because some of those community members are also the landowners here. The other thing that I would say really went right in this project was how everyone was able to partner, the different TA providers that were working on this project, as well as the community services district that is taking on ownership and operation of this. We're all really able to partner with the state water board on this project to make sure that we could overcome the barriers in this project and speed up the timeline when we could. And so there's a couple of examples I want to give about how we were able to proactively strategize together to make things happen in this project. One is that originally the 100% design was slated to be under the construction funding, but we were able to identify together with the state water board that we could really speed up this project if we were doing the 100% design under TA. And so CWC was able to add 100% design as well as bidding and contracting under our technical assistance agreement, which meant that by the time the construction funding was executed, we were already all the way through that process and they could begin on construction instead of just then beginning on the 100% design. So that in itself probably sped up this project timeline by at least 6 to 8 months. If that hadn't happened, this community still would not have construction ongoing. So that's was one key event. Another thing that was really helpful, we did have some issues with easements in this project. For example, one easement, it wasn't contentious at all, but the property owner had like 9 different people listed on the title, some of whom were deceased. And so in order to actually get that easement, it took over a year of coordinating with this property owner to actually get the official easement signed. That easement was not actually official and executed until several months after we began construction. And so being able to work with the state water board and do things in slightly unconventional ways to make sure that we weren't allowing those types of barriers to slow down these projects and mean that people don't have access to clean drinking water as soon as they could, that type of proactive project management to do things simultaneously rather than sequentially really helped this project move on. That's another example that if we hadn't been able to start construction before finalizing all of the easements, we still wouldn't have started construction here. So those types of problem solving together with the state water board and figuring out how we could overcome those things was really key to making sure that we got to where we did here and as soon as we did here. And then we were also able to really lean in with the state water board around some other barriers. This mobile home park was not originally, I would say, a willing participant in this project. And that really could have stopped this project in its tracks. And instead, we were able to really lean in together with the State Water Board, with DBW, also with Monterey County, and figure out how do we get this thing to still happen and make sure that the 100 different connections in that mobile home park still get access to clean water, even if the owner of the mobile home park wasn't super excited about the project. So that was another really big barrier to this project that we were able to all lean in together to figure out and overcome. And here we are today with construction. So those two things, really partnering with the community and really partnering with each other, with the State Water Board and RTU providers to overcome those barriers and find creative and proactive ways to manage these projects, I think is really what it takes to get these domestic well projects, which are often very complex and have lots of barriers. That is how we are going to get from where we're at now to these long-term solutions in these communities. I think that's all I got. Any questions? Thank you, Roxanne.
Any questions on the zoning bill, Bill?
Yeah, just super appreciate you from CWC just highlighting that very, important milestone with domestic well consolidation, because I mean, it's, there was Tombstone in Fresno County, and then, here with Moss Landing in Monterey County. And for me, like working with another domestic well community in Fresno County, like, we're still in its pre-stages of, really determining the feasibility around that community connecting to at least like a community service area system. And I think one of the big questions that I have, like, it's around outreach and engagement within the TA, well, I guess like the TA process overall, because for me, I feel like because I'm a representative of an organization, I'm standing in these project meetings. And I feel like it doesn't really do justice when I don't have someone from the domestic well community be able to actually participate effectively and actively with like State Water Board, the county. And so I would really want to kind of hear from you how you were able to kind of integrate a community resident in those project meetings, since that they are a critical, asset to making that project move forward.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass that question to Brandon, who is our community advocacy director and really heads that piece of our work up.
That's a huge question. We often say that change happens at the speed of trust. So in making sure that when we're working in domestic well communities, we know that there's a lot of challenges and barriers. And Silverio was talking about earlier, language access. There on the right up here, a lot of people were saying in the community, we were remembering that there's sometimes a distrust in government agencies coming in and starting projects and maybe not finishing them. And so it's about commitment. And that's where I think the trust building comes. And so what Roxanne was pointing out about, being creative, figuring out solutions and thinking through those, that requires, I think, a lot of commitment. And it allows us as folks that are on the ground doing door knocking to say, the state's committed to figuring out these hard questions. And so I think from them, they hear from us, okay, yeah, we're in partnership together. And maybe it's not always easy to show up to meetings like this and participate and know how we're moving things forward. But when we're all kind of working together to bridge some of those gaps, I think it really helps. And so, yes, we need to make sure that when we're talking about projects moving forward in communities, that we're really mindful about how we're talking about things, because most of the times I think projects, the hardest part is not how we draw pipes along roads. It's about people. And so that's where we really need to lean in and figure out how we're communicating with each other and build that trust. And I think working with technical assistance providers that are doing the on the ground work like you are, that are talking to people, door knocking, like let's really lean in and invest in that, because that goes a long way, so that when we get towards the very end of a project, we're only left with one person that says no, and they have a really good reason for why they're thinking that, right? And they're informed and they're engaged, and not a bunch of piecemeal households in the end that are like, wait a second, maybe I do want this and I missed the boat.
That's good. Yeah, no, I appreciate that feedback, just because for me, half that community is like, I guess the way that we've been observing it is that they're feeling as if nothing's happening to their wells, so they don't really need to engage now. And they're almost questioning whether or not it makes sense to consolidate. So it's this idea that, well, my well's not
it doesn't really like smell or taste weird, or it's not dry, so why should I even like think about this idea of connecting to Raisin City? For them, it's like, well, I have long-term water, but then it's like the 8 households that are across from them, they're all dry and they ran out, and then 3 have nitrates, so it's almost like how I think overall for me, I would still need to navigate like
You
the
can
proper
wrap up your
outreach.
thoughts. Sorry, you can wrap up your thoughts. We'll probably have one more question, and then I'm gonna ask also folks to maybe hold on to the questions. Will you be joining us on the tour, Roxanne? Or
on the tour, but I
McGinnis?
will be at the JML.
Okay, so we'll have access to folks, but that way we can also just keep track on the agenda to get on the tour. So you can wrap up your thoughts.
I'm gonna reach out to you both.
Yeah.
I'll just catch you at the store.
Thank you, Angela. And real quick, I know, Brian, you're not coming to the tour, but do you wanna ask your question? I was just gonna.
No,
record it.
keep going.
Okay. So Juan, Jim, I do have your question, I have your names.
Sorry.
We will ask the questions at the physical place when we get there. Thank you. Thank you, Roxanne, and we'll yield the floor, Senor Silverio and Brandon, we'll go to the next slide, and it'll be a presentation on McGinnis first. And next slide.
Buenas tardes otra vez. Pues yo quiero decirles que yo estuve allí en la comunidad de Springfield por invitación de la comunidad. Y fuimos yo y mi esposa. Y fue algo que nos llenó nos motivó.
So thank you, everybody. I just want to let you know.
Nos puso muy contentos y estuvimos con esa esperanza. Lo que pasó ahí que pues,
I just wanted to mention that I wanted to say my wife and I, we were at the Springfield site and we were very touched by what we saw.
Sí. Ellos nos pusieron un ejemplo a nosotros por lo que estamos tratando de proyecto ahí en Johnson, McGinnis y Lywood, son estos lugares.
So they shared with us.
Good example of what we wanted to do at this site that we're talking about now at Thomas Innes and Lywood.
Por eso digo que ver que ellos su logro después de tanto esfuerzo que hicieron, nos sentimos que sí podemos, y nosotros sigamos trabajando, pues reuniéndonos y haciendo lo que tenemos que hacer, creo que podemos llegar a esa meta.
Being able to see the success that they have had in how they kept going and persevering and they kept meeting, then now we know that if we keep going and we keep meeting and moving forward, we will also be successful in our project.
Y hoy este día, pues mi comunidad está ya esperando para compartir cómo ha sido el proceso desde que comenzamos el problema, desde que nos dimos cuenta más bien del problema que teníamos con nuestros pozos.
Today, my community is out there waiting for you guys, so we can share with you what we've done and what we've seen since we became aware of the problems that we had in our water.
Y pues como les digo, esta es nuestra esperanza que siguiendo los pasos que tenemos que seguir, pues, tenemos el corazón, el coraje de que lo podemos lograr, porque ya tenemos el ejemplo de Springfield y somos una comunidad similar, parecida casi a nuestros problemas.
So we have hope that if we continue in our efforts and we wholeheartedly work together, we will be able to have the same success as Springfield had, because we are a very similar community.
Yo creo que Brandon puede compartir todo lo que se ha hecho con todos unidos, la comunidad, el grupo asesor técnico.
I think Brandon now can share more details on all the efforts that have been made in this community and with the technical group.
Thank you, Sylvia. Gracias.
Gracias.
So today we're going to be visiting the community of Johnson McGinnis Live Oak Road area. That's a long name for a community, and that's because it's an unincorporated area just outside of Las Lomas, in between Las Lomas and Royal Oaks. There's 3 different mailing addresses or mailing cities oftentimes in this area. And when we present, it can be sometimes confusing to say, this is the JML, Johnson McGinnis, this is Royal Oaks, this is Las Lomas, this is outside of Aromas or Watsonville. But what we're talking about is an area just off of Hall Road. It consists of Johnson McGinnis, Live Oak, Betty Lane, Lot Road. There's several households. It's around 244 households in this area over here that we're talking about. Many of the households maybe 20 years ago started getting their wells tested as neighbors were starting to worry about some of their about their drinking water and their wells. It's a domestic well area, and people started to realize that there was nitrates in the area. Back in 2017, the Greater Monterey Integrated Regional Water Management Group put out a report saying these are some of the areas in the Greater Monterey area that have a high concentration of water quality issues. And this 2017 cohort of areas in this region, the Johnson McGinnis Live Oak Road area was identified as one of them. We were able to work, thanks in large part to the Central Coast Regional Water Board, to start testing a lot of those wells around 2019. Into the pandemic, it was a little bit tricky, but we started to make headway more in 2021. And then that community started working on an alternative analysis starting in 2022, and that alternative analysis was completed in 2024. And the recommended solution, and what we worked with the community to also identify as what they're also looking for, was to connect to the nearby system of Las Lomas, which is operated by Cal Water. We were able to work with Cal Water to start to talk about, is that something that they're able to also take on? And so we've been in partnership with the community, with Cal Water, with the State Water Board, thanks to SAFER funding. And starting in Q1 of next year, the preliminary engineering report will be complete for this area. So we're continuing to make progress and work towards a long-term solution. Right now, we're in contact with all of those households. The large majority of them are on a regional bottled water program that's funded by SAFER. And working initially with the Central Coast Regional Water Board, we were able to also identify pilot project to put in CP treatment for point of entry. There's 3 systems that are installed in the community, so households not only have access to safe drinking water through the bottled water program, which is an interim resource, but they also have access to this TCP pilot, which is able to support households so that they can bathe with hot water and not be afraid of coming in contact with the contaminant via steam. Board Member McGuire came out when we first initially installed one of these to see what these systems look like, and how SAFER is helping us continue to learn more about these systems by supporting the funding for this project to continue. We're working towards a long-term solution. The community is very set on that goal, and that's what we're continuing to continue to push for alongside residents. So we'll be going out there to talk to residents today.
Muchas gracias, Brandon. Thank you both. And we will be stopping at McGinnis Road today. So if you have questions regarding the projects in the comunidad, we'll hold on to those until we get with the meeting. Muchas gracias a los dos. I think something that's really key to mention when we were coordinating this meeting and tour was the theme for the tour, and the theme was helping out our neighbor. And it was in conversation with Cal Water, the projects that they're doing, but also the conversations with Senor Silverio and the projects that they're seeing. Something that I remember from Springfield Road in the groundbreaking is that folks just felt hope. So they said, this gives me hope to continue to advocate and to figure out what can be done for my community. So it was important to highlight and for us to see those successes as they're advancing and the progress, and so also just allow other folks to continue to get a little bit of vitamin from those good projects happening. So thank you. We're gonna go ahead and go to the next slide. And before we go on to the advisory group member announcements, I do want to acknowledge that we have State Water Board's Vice Chair Diodamo here with us. And if you like to come to the table, if you like, we have a seat here, if you like. So thank you for joining us. You will also joining us in the tour. And then McGuire will also be joining us in part of the tour. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Commissioner Houck is also here.
And here, Commissioner Darcy Houck is also here. You can stand up so folks also. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and go on to the advisory group member announcements. It is 11:44. We're pretty on time. So we'll ask any advisory member that may have an announcement to advise on the project, the event title, when is it happening, next steps, and we'll also just ask you to keep your comments and announcements concise within 3 minutes, just to allow other advisory members to share an announcement that they may have. And if you're online, you can go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on your name. And if you're here physically present, we can also use the table tent or your hand. Go ahead, Angela.
Okay, so I'm hopeful that, so I'm helping to monitor the Perry Colony water consolidation project in West Fresno County. And Self Help Enterprises is the direct TA that's working with Fresno County Public Works to investigate a way to consolidate this community that's off of South Hayes Avenue, Manning Avenue, near Raisin City. Right now we have Blackwater Engineering, who's gonna be developing the draft engineering report to kind of go through the feasibility options for the community to look into different ways to consolidate. But I'm hoping that next week I'll hear that they're gonna be submitting that soon to State Water Board for review. And we're looking for in the new year between January and March to do more robust outreach to get folks to kind of engage a lot more once the final engineering report is more finalized, to get them to start organizing for an actual like town hall meeting in Raisin City. So that way residents can actually ask questions or even, ask about hopefully like services to determine how they can, test their wells or even for water depth and contamination. But I am looking forward to working more closely with Self Help to develop that outreach plan for the new year to start kind of getting more folks to engage in the consolidation project, but crossing fingers that they can submit it by next week. That's my update.
Thank you, Angela. Any other announcements from advisory group members?
I have a quick one, Stephanie and I was in Madera County, just announcing that our county GSA adopted rules for domestic well mitigation in the Madera subbasin this week. So very happy about that. You'll note I presented a quarter ago and the rules were in development. So we were able to at least get rules brought to fruition. Thanks.
Thank you for that update. Any other updates? Go ahead, Fran.
Yeah, Self Help Enterprises is working with the DFA right now to extend our Safer TA program. So we're in the middle of executing that agreement. So we're super excited about that. And maybe the end of this month or beginning of next month, we'll be working on extending our Central to Sewer TA program as well with DFA. So Self Help Enterprises is super excited about seeing the TA projects and continuing working with communities.
Thank you. Thank you, Fran. Go ahead, Ken.
I'd given an announcement before about a project that we're working on for small system compliance using point of entry, point of use, where we were combining safer members, EPA members, industry and whatnot through the research foundation, through the WQRF Research Foundation. The project stalled a little bit, mainly due to a few of our staff members adding to their family. Celebratory. So they were off and out of the office for a little while, but we are kicking that back up in the new year and do hope to have that project up and running, really on a collaborative effort with the state of California. As I mentioned earlier, what we're trying to do is establish a program where the SAFER can be implemented in other states successfully So that's not just the state of California that's doing this program, but we're developing a process that's then going to be rolled out to other states so that we can mirror this program as well.
Thank you, Shannon. Any other announcements? I'm checking online if folks have an announcement, but I don't see a hand raised. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. We'll go to public comment. And Twitter, yes, we will have the recording available online. And so we'll also send notes, meeting minutes on this meeting to Twitter. Thank you. So for public comments, I am gonna check to see, do you have any members of the public here with us? Might be messenger. I'm gonna check real quick online, if we received any comments through our inbox. We don't see any, but I do recall we had someone, an attendee. And I see your hand raised, Sean Abbey, I'm gonna go ahead and should be able to unmute yourself. And you can go ahead and make your public comment. I'll ask you if we can be concise and keep it within 3 minutes.
Absolutely. Can you folks hear me all right?
We can hear you well.
Great, thank you. My name is Sean Abbey. I'm with Santa Cruz County. I'm a water quality specialist. And we did receive a grant through the SAFER program to help domestic wells and state small water systems with water quality problems. Specifically, we're focusing on water quality problems. And we had initially gotten this grant, and we were planning to start a program for testing and providing services for residents that are found to have an MCL exceedance. And in the process of doing that, we actually were the Central Coast program that was a presentation that you were previously given was brought to our attention, and we were really happy to find that program because it really complemented our plan. And so we were actually able to partner with that Central Coast Free Well Testing Program and essentially piggyback off that program and work with them to do public outreach and all of that. And because of the work with that program, we were way more successful in our testing ambitions than we had originally anticipated. We ended up having 186 wells to date tested, which far and away exceeded what we expected. I really just want to mention that we had a great working experience with them. Julia Dyer was our point of contact, and it was fantastic working with her. So like I said, we were really successful in that sampling effort. We actually had much better water quality results than it seems like was kind of the norm. We had about 17% of our wells tested having exceedances. Where we did find that we had trouble, though, was that we did not provide services to as many of those wells as we had originally were hoping. So for reference, we had 32 wells that came back with an exceedance of some kind, but only 5 of those we actually ended up providing services to. Part of that we believe is due to our contract negotiations. We were only able to provide services for folks who are in disadvantaged communities, which didn't really overlap with where we're finding wells in our community, or folks who were able to certify that they were below a state median income. And our community, we have severe affordability problems, but our incomes are generally higher. So we feel like a lot of homes were kind of eliminated from getting services because of that. But overall, like I said, the free well testing program was a great resource, and we've done a lot of good work working with them, and we're looking forward to continuing this program going forward and hopefully expanding the number of wells we're able to provide services to.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate you providing public comment and giving an update on the work that's happening there.
Yeah, and we'd be happy to provide additional updates in the future if desired.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Are there any other public comments? And I don't see any other hands online. Now we can go ahead and go to the next slide. And that slide as well. Closing remarks. We are wrapping up this meeting. This is the last Safer Advisory Group meeting of the year. But also it's the last Safer Advisory Group meeting for some of our members. So I'd be remiss if I do not make time to acknowledge, especially advisory group members that are online. We have Isabel Solorio, Don James, who had joined us since 2020. Rami Kalan, who had joined us since 2022. Señor Silverio, Edwin Alonso, and I'm really happy that you're here in person. And Stephanie and Agneson. And so I just want to give a big round of applause also to the advisory group members for this. Helping in advance the water board's mission through the Safer Advisory Group. So, señora Isabel, muchísimas gracias por su trabajo, señor Silverio. With that said, we are adjourning this meeting portion and we're gonna get ready to go on our drinking water tour. So folks can start wrapping up, use the restrooms. There will be a box lunch. Thank you, Rami, for providing also lunch. We have some goodie bags and snacks to get on the way, and questions that you may have, we'll be able to tackle some of them on the bus. It'll be a fun tour. Thank you, everybody.
Gracias.
Yeah. We'll be back.
Recording stopped.